Hi, everyone, and welcome to fan commentary on Trick or Treat. Probably one of my favorite episodes, holiday episodes specifically from PR in general. I've always enjoyed holiday episodes. They're always fun little side bits that the series can do. What I don't like is when they do them in the extreme way, like the Alpha Magical Christmas one. That one is just, it doesn't really make any sense. Now, Trick or Treat is a pretty interesting episode because it's more of the unique ones from Choose footage that I thought was pretty interesting because Japan always came up with some very odd episodes when they did their Ju stuff. They always came up with some very bizarre episodes. So the whole pumpkin wrapper idea was I thought was very enjoyable, and it became very memorable to fans because it's just so left field and the characters get to do something different for a change. This is like a double-edged sword episode. I always found this episode very enjoyable, fun, but it's also sucks because the Power Rangers always get screwed out of things that they should get to do, be fun. And in this case, Kimberly was going through this game show, and she was supposed to win the car. And they just get messed out of it, which is not fair. Now, the one thing I want to really know is that how did Skull get picked on this game show out of everyone here? The cool thing, though, is that Skull gets featured in this episode, and that's what I really liked. I think this was probably one of the episodes that turned me finally to Bulk and Skull because, like I had said in the past, I really didn't care for them in the early episodes when they were. And it's not because they were like super real bullies in the first, the first early episodes when they didn't get their characters down at the time. I liked them both ways. It was just that they would interfere with the story, the main PR story, and they were fluff. That's how I always felt like they were. But when you put them in like this, where they are a part of the story, and they mess with Kimberly, and of course we can see, Skull be fun, because Skull really never got a lot to shine. It was always bulk, bulk, bulk. So when he finally got to be the hero in this one, I was like, okay, I could finally actually start liking you two characters. Now, Rita's plan is always weird and sick to a degree because it's just like Rita always, has to come up with some plan for the Power Rangers. And as she probably, fought them and kept losing, she just probably trying to up the ante and try to way to screw the Rangers every which way they can. Obviously, she set up this plan because she knew that Kim was gonna, go into this contest. So what better way to mess with them is to ruin their general lives. Now, the one thing I had wished the series could have every so often continued was like this game show. This type of game show could have been running through all the series over the years as like a little fun thing that they could have kept doing because it's very simple concept. It's just them trying to trick the host into saying things. If I'm remembering correctly, Skull's outfit is referencing a movie. I can't remember which movie it is though. This I always felt weird. It's just like, did they cut something out, like where he was obsessed with floss, and the only time we see him do it is here? Now, what the Rangers are wearing, it's very, very weird. I think that's probably why I also find the episode fun is that the Rangers actually dress up in these funny costumes. Now, this episode's also pretty interesting in itself, is that it actually reuses footage from Green with Evil Part 1. And it shows that MMPR actually filmed a lot of additional material that was cut from various episodes. which, and so we get to see more of Green with Evil's footage. And you know how you notice? If you pay attention to the background, you can actually see Jason in the background waiting his turn while the performer starts up his training routine. I always wondered how much footage is actually cut out per episode, because if it happens in Green with Evil, it must happen in almost all episodes, and it would have been great if we were able to see this lost footage. Now, I think this is probably where Rita started going downhill in her ability because, okay, yes, Tommy was walking through the park and was kind of confused why there was, stinking, dying pumpkins, but nothing really gave him the edge of, like, is this a Rita plant? If she didn't send down the putties, he would have never had realized it from the get-go, which was always stupid on that case. Now, I also found this trick question it kind of stupid, because if you think about it, Kim asked, okay, do you know the secret identity of the Power Rangers? That's not really a trick question, because the correct answer would be no, and so there would be no trick to it. Although I always try to figure out like what were the rules to this game, there was really not much to it because they don't really go into detail. So it would have been nice if they had continued this, game show in other seasons. We could have gotten more rules. Now I want to know how uncomfortable this was for Amy Jo because she really does do this. There's no stunt performer. They are spinning her around, so that must have been an interesting day. Now, one of the major questions that I always wondered when they were using the Ju2 footage, did Japan just come up with the episodes themselves and then the US would come back later and then just figure out a way to use the footage? Or is there some basic outline that the US writers came up with for episodes, gave them to Japan to film? It was fairly coordinated on their, the way they used the footage. Yeah, certain things they couldn't use, like, they had to adapt the whole, there was this, the item, the weapon of the day that would come out of nowhere. Certain character traits were incorrect. And then obviously certain things that they did film, like the episode where they were tied to crosses, that had to be heavily edited because they didn't understand that crosses are not really appropriate for a kid's show. So I always wondered, like, how did that really work? It would have been nice if they had gone into more in depth to that. This is probably like the dumbest thing that Bulk and Skull has ever done. It's just like, why did you rely on Bulk reading out the name or whatever and not simply memorize this? It was so stupid. If they hadn't done that, Skull pretty much did everything else himself and did everything right, and he could have won the car and it would have been a happy day for him. Now, if you look very closely in the back on the top of the screen, you could see Jason's right there. He can't be in two places at once, so obviously that gives the clue of this being from Green with Evil. It's just some material that they cut out. And, unfortunately for that guy who got, originally cut out from doing all that work in Green with Evil, he finally got to see here. Now, what's also kind of unique to this, because you know how with Ju2's footage, they had eventually switched to season 2 and used the Die Ranger footage, but they were forced to use the Ju2 footage until a certain point when they used it up because, they spent a lot of money on the Ju2 footage and they didn't want to go to waste. In this particular episode, they actually decided to cut out Pumpkin Rapper's Zord fight. We do get to see it eventually later on in Ju2 when Pumpkin Rapper was revived. It was very surprising that they were allowed to do that because you'd think Saban would have been like, no, we filmed, that footage, we have to use it, use it, use it, use it. It's just like, well, for a change, the story of the episode actually superseded them using footage. Although they did reuse footage here, but at least it was something new that we haven't seen, so it was okay besides Jason being there. Now, the whole riping of the pumpkin wrapper really didn't make much sense. I think this is kind of where the footage limitations comes into play, because the whole idea is the pumpkin wrapper was planted and he has to grow in order to become the pumpkin wrapper. But later on in the episode, you like all of a sudden the Rangers just simply provoke him to come out, and then all of a sudden that's it, and then that's it. The whole timing thing doesn't really make any sense. Now, if you pay attention, you can also see they reuse some footage from other episodes because the console there is open. They've done that many times. They don't want to reshoot a lot of the command center stuff over and over again. So every now and again, you see that type of mistakes. I always thought this was very dumb. I wish they had played it off in a more, fair way. One, I don't understand why Kim didn't hear a communicator, but two, she was almost done. If she just simply had just continued for a little bit more, she could have gotten the car. What's also interesting here, Billy usually is pretty good with his sciencey stuff, and the writers do an okay job with him. But in this case, that was a blatant mistake. He said a cardiac infarction, which is actually a heart attack. I've known that so many times because of House MD, and I was surprised. It's just like they didn't use the correct term for fainting. Honestly, I had wished Bulk and Skull actually didn't win here. If they didn't cheat, though, if they were playing fair and square, fine. Because, honestly, just because Bulk and Skull are the bad guys, they should win every now and again. Now, okay, it makes sense that the pumpkins attaching to the Ranger's head cause all those problems. Yet, what are the advantages for the pumpkin putties? That never really made any sense to me. I mean, the only thing you could think of is that obviously the putties don't breathe, and they obviously don't see through their eyes in the human sense, so maybe they could see through their entire body. But why have them be as pumpkins? It really never made any sense. I mean, it's a cool little, bonus thing, and honestly, it would be kind of interesting to have these type of skin options in a video game, like for Battle for the Grid. It would be nice to have the Rangers in their pumpkin hats, and maybe give a bonus effect, or just, as just a skin selector. I would see. This is where I wish they had kind of thought about a way to get around Kim, playing the game, because here the footage actually does work with Kim popping up late, because she does walk off screen, and then obviously is there in the footage. But if she had walked, they stayed from where they walked off screen and extended it a little bit more with maybe U.S. footage, they could have had Kim stay on the game show and win the game. Or if Skull played fair, they actually have a fair match between each other and have Skull win. That would have been more interesting too, because it doesn't mean just because Skull, again, like I said, just because they're the bad guys doesn't mean they shouldn't win. Yeah, we hate their guts, but if they win, we'll just hate their guts anyway. But they did it fair and square, so we would give them a little bit more respect. I think it would have been more of an interesting episode, and it would fit the holiday theme, kind of like how in Super Samurai, where Bulk and Spike had, lucked out, and they got the bike in that episode from Mike. So it would have been nice, as another holiday episode where he won the car. I always wondered how the stunt performers saw through those pumpkin hats, helmets, whatever. It's just like you can barely see any type of holes or anything. That would have been an interesting day to film in this type of show. I always wondered how complicated it was to film this Q2 stuff for Japan, because, while this is going on, they're filming, Kaku Ranger. So they have to have like a small sub team that, they have to bring back the old Jew Ranger suits, and they have to make sure they're in good condition. They don't have a lot of money, so they can't do much. That's the reason why the Rangers are always outside and they're in public locations. And a lot of the stuff is not in like, perfect shape. Certain things you can see are worn out. Because again, the Jew Ranger suits are at this point 2 years old. It's only for us. So I wondered, how complicated it was back then for them to do all this. That's the thing I wish that the bonus material from the DVD sets would have gone into more depth. Now, I think this is like the most weirdest moment of the Rangers they've done. It's very out of character they would do this. So the only way to provoke them, they have to kind of do lame raps. Honestly, the reason why I love this episode is because of the pumpkin wrapper, because it's just so corny and you love it. And it fits perfectly fine with PR because again, we've done so many weird episodes where they've switched bodies. Uh, Rangers have gone as punks, so it's like it's all believable. You really don't have any problems with it. And when it's like a holiday episode, I give the show even more slack. It's just like the same thing with like Megaforce and Samurai's clip shows. Well, not Megaforces, Samurai's and Dino Charge's clip shows. Uh, I don't mind that. It's like, okay, it's a fun holiday episode. You don't want to spend a lot of money, but you still want to celebrate the holiday. Fine, do the clip show. It's still interesting. The worst thing though that happens in this episode, of course, is Tommy. It's like just as he's about to go on stage, he gets screwed and he has to leave. It's like it's never fair. It's never fair. Tommy is the worst one off because Tommy has to suffer through being brainwashed and then always having low power. He had to be recharged by Zordon, so he has to take some of his life energy to do it. So Tommy has gotta always feel horrible whenever he has to do these type of things. Oh, I'm just gonna go in a karate match, and just when I have to disqualify myself. It's just never fair. It's always one blunder after another blunder to save the Rangers or to save the city. It's the one thing I always hate when heroes have to do this because I mean it's the same thing like Spider-Man. He goes through the same problem. He has a horrible life doing the right thing. Yes, he's doing the right thing and he's saving the city, but it's really not fair. And there should be times where you know what? I will do this, but I want to finish what I want to do in my regular life. I wish the Rangers had dealt with some stories like that where the Rangers like, no, I'm going to finish what I'm doing, then I'm going to help regardless because I would be kind of annoyed after a certain point of constantly just, losing out on things. Also, I found it funny that Jason said the Mega Blaster. I think this is like the fourth time they incorrectly labeled things. I mean, we're at like episode 53, 54, and we still have naming problems. It's also weird too because, the actors should know the names of the Zords and weapons. After this point, you think Austin St. John would have said, this is not called the Mega Blaster, it's called a Power Blaster. Now, this is one of those very rare shots where we get to see the juice bar's doorway. They rarely ever have the characters actually appear in front of it because they have to dress it up. So it's not really done often. But it's nice to actually see it. I wish they did it more often because I always wondered what actually goes into that doorway because it's obviously not a juice bar gym for the where they actually film it. Now, I really like this car. It's a pretty cool car for the 90s. I wondered if Kim did win the car, would Jason kind of feel like I should have the car because it's red? That would have been a funny little moment. What also I had thought when I was younger, when I first saw the episodes, I had wished the Rangers had won this car because I'm like, this is a perfect upgrade to the Rad Bug. Just stick the stupid round thing on the hood and just add a few of the extra doodads. Here's your Rad Bug 2.0. That would have been a fun way to bring it back and keep using it through seasons 2 and 3. Change the car every so often. While this joke was funny, I always complained. It's just like, why did he have no pants on? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, that just really shows how stupid Bulk is. If you like my content, consider leaving a like and subscribing.